All righty, gang, we are back. It is I, your host, Allen Plexico of White Rocket Books and AvengersAssemble.net, and I'm back with yet another episode of All of the Avengers. This episode, we're going to look at the very first appearance of the Living Laser, always one of my favorite kind of flunky villains, and we're going to see his first appearance here in the pages of the Avengers, which happened in the pages of the Avengers. And I was not aware of that before I reread these. I read the Avengers every issue years ago, many years ago, and I'd forgotten that Living Laser actually first appears. In fact, I'm not sure I ever had read this story before. This two-parter. It's another two-parter. Stan Lee kind of gets into this rhythm every so often in this series where he does this thing where there's a 2-issue story. The first issue, it's very much like the way the old 1966 Batman show, was done, where there's 2 episodes. The first one leaves them with a cliffhanger, and the second one finishes it up. It's very much like that. We've already looked at a whole raft of them so far, several of them over the last probably 20 issues or so. Pretty much once I feel like, and again, this is off of memory, but I feel like what I remember is when it was the original lineup, Thor and Iron Man and Giant Man and the Wasp and the Hulk, and then Captain America, I feel like they had a lot of 1-issue standalones. But once the lineup changed to Cap's Kooky Quartet, as we call them, Captain America, Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver, once it changed to them, we got a lot of these 2-issue deals where it seemed to take them, 1 issue they would get captured, and then the next issue they would get freed and would, free themselves and would defeat the enemy. And that's what we're kind of back to now, although you do notice that the lineup has changed recently in that we now have Captain America and Hawkeye, but Stan keeps it fresh, right? I like that he doesn't leave the lineup, and that's one of the things the Avengers are most famous for, is a constantly changing lineup. But it hasn't just been the Cap's Kooky Quartet very often. I mean, the last few issues we've got now, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch have gone off on an early version of what we would later call the Yesterday Quest. They've gone off to other countries, and so they've been replaced by Hank and Jan, the Wasp and now Goliath. So you still have Cap's Kooky Quartet, but it's a different quartet, and it's been effective too. I mean, this seems like a lineup to me. I mean, that first lineup with Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, and then Hank and Jan, that seemed like a classic Avengers lineup if you don't include the Hulk, right? And then this lineup feels classic with Captain America, Hawkeye, Hank and Jan. And I guess if Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch come back and you have 6, and you see on the cover here, we have all 6 of them represented. That really is starting to me to feel like a typical Avengers lineup, right? Captain America, the Wasp, they are like the 2 mainstays in this book. And then Hawkeye, Hank Pym, Scarlet Witch. I mean, those are core Avengers to me. Quicksilver, a little more peripheral, but he's there more often than not, it seems like. If you could somehow have Iron Man and Thor guest star with that 6 right there, I mean, you're 90% of the way to as good of an Avengers lineup as we ever had. I mean, at that point, you're only really missing Wonder Man or the Beast or Black Widow maybe, or Hercules, or I don't know. I mean, at that point, you pretty much got the classic one. So that's interesting. It's just been interesting to see how it evolved. Now, I want to point out, I'm planning going forward to cover more issues per episode, because it's dawning on me that I'm going to die of old age before I get to issue 100, much less 400, right? So I do plan to speed this up. But for this episode, I want to go ahead and do a quick one where I just cover the Living Laser, because I've always really liked the Living Laser. This is not the Living Laser the way I think of him, but it's his first appearance. Don Heck drawing him, Stan kind of writing him all arch and everything. Oh, and I wanted to cover it. And one other thing, I needed to stop with these two because there's a pretty big change coming with 36. And that is, with 36, we get the first time that Roy Thomas steps in to script, where Stan kind of does the plot and Roy comes in and writes like the dialogue and the specific, panel to panel stuff. So that's going to be a big change. And once Roy comes in, I guess I'll try to do more issues in a batch. But that's kind of cool, because that means I've really gone through and covered the entire Stan Lee by himself run, one or two issues at a time for the most part. I think we had like a 3 maybe or a 4 at one point, but just once, right? So I feel pretty good about that. I feel good that we've done the Stan Lee run 1 or 2 issues at a time. And again, we'll kind of zip our way through Roy's era a little faster, I think. And then, once we get up into like the Steve Englehart era, and then the Jim Shooter era and all that, I may slow down again I'm not going to slow down. I may go back to 1 issue at a time. I don't know. We'll see. Or 2. In any case, let's go ahead and dig into Avengers 34 and 35, the Living Laser, one of the most deadly super foes in the annals of Marveldom. So it is introducing him, and you can see the costume that the Living Laser has here. He's got a cape, which just never works for me. The idea of the Living Laser with a cape is just wrong. The Melter has a cape, right? But not the Living Laser. But I do like one thing. The color scheme that the Living Laser has here is pretty much the color scheme he keeps going forward, which to me really works, right? It's that green and copper. I really like that green and copper color for the Living Laser. That just always makes me think the Living Laser, because it's so unusual, but it looks good for him. So once we get rid of his cape, and instead of shooting, because he is the Living Laser, it's like Stan came up with a great name for a character here, but he missed the opportunity to actually, make him what the name implies. He's not a guy. He shouldn't be a guy with some artificial lasers he's hooked on like guns. He should be like a living laser, kind of like Claw is living sound. That's how I've always thought of the Living Laser, is like the Claw is the sound guy and Living Laser is the laser guy in terms of what they're made out of and what they can do, right? So anyway, so there's the Living Laser. I really like him. Again, I've always seen him as more of a flunky, like with the Lethal Legion, working with Whirlwind and Blizzard or whoever, or Power Man, the Eric Jostin Power Man. So it's odd to see him as like a solo villain going up against the Avengers. Again, he fought Iron Man solo at one point. So I like the Living Laser fighting individual heroes, but I don't know of him really being like worthy of fighting, maybe Cap's Kooky Quartet is depowered enough that, well, we'll find out. Let's see if he can make a go of it against the 4-person Avengers team. So there he is. Oh, I love the colors. I can't stand the costume here. And basically here, and that's the name of the issue, the Living Laser. And by the way, throughout this issue, is that Ron DeSantis back in 1965? Or 19, where are we? 66 now? Let's see, 66, yeah. This is the November 66. So we're almost out of 66 into 67. But anyway, they call him the Laser a lot in this issue. And I'm not sure if Living Laser is supposed to be his character name or just the name of the issue, or like the Incredible Hulk, the Amazing Spider-Man, the Living Laser. I don't know. It's not really clear. See, because he says, why is he called the Laser, is what it says in the caption. But I don't know. So anyway, he's robbing banks, and the cops come in. By the way, again, I continue to really like Don Heck's art here. I really think it works. It's kind of sketchy, and this may be more the inking. This is I guess this is Don Heck inking himself. And we know that inking goes a long way, so in how you view an art. But anyway, so so he's robbing a bank, and the Avengers kind of resent being called in just to stop a bank robbery. They're still talking about polishing off the Serpent Society. Hawkeye's all excited about Black Widow. So once again, Stan loves him some bureaucracy, right? Stan loves to have the Avengers doing like Robert's Rules of Order. I just love that. And so he's like, here's Hank. Our business is concluded for today as acting chairman pro tem. You're a bunch of superheroes for crying out loud. I do hereby declare this meeting adjourned. Gosh, High Pockets, how come you never went into politics? You and Cap are the best speech makers I know. Amen. All right. Well, anyway, Hawkeye says there's a cure for insomnia, which in this case is the first thing Hawkeye's ever said that I probably agree with. Anyway, they decide to go help out with this bank robbery in a cool Tony Stark's new Arrow car. And Jan goes off shopping or something, is talking to her friend. This is where the living laser sees her and falls in love with her. So here's the really, I didn't want to forget this. Here's the quirky thing about this story. I don't have a ton to say about this two-part story, honestly, but here's one of the quirky things I wanted to mention about it. The living laser sees Jan. And by the way, I think this is kind of the MO of the Whirlwind too, right? Doesn't the Whirlwind work as Jan's chauffeur and falls in love with her too or something? That may be a few issues into the future, because I think I read that in a Marvel triple action reprint. So we haven't gotten to the Whirlwind falling in love with Jan too, but it's like Jan loves Hank. Hank's busy doing science stuff. Super villains fall in love with Jan, and then Hank has to fight the super villain. It's a strange formula that kind of forms here. But anyway, the living laser falls in love with Jan on sight, and here's the thing: he decides the way to win her over romantically is to show he's the most powerful super person, right? Not hero or villain, whatever. So he wants to defeat the Avengers in battle so that then Jan will fall in love with him. I'm not sure he understands how things like that work, right? If you defeat her boyfriend in battle, and I do still think of him as her husband, because again, I'm working backwards here from where I, started reading when I was a kid in the 160s. But I'm not sure he understands how romance works. You don't win a woman over by, is he a caveman? I mean, by beating up, defeating in battle her boyfriend. I mean, whatever. But it's interesting how Stan's mind works when he writes these stories, isn't it? That's what Stan thought was a really good idea for the motivations of a villain. Yeah. So, okay. Well, anyway, so he's got all the money he could want, but he's going to go out and impress the Wasp. So he puts on his living laser costume. And we get these forever, right? Years and years later, we still see Captain America working out in the Avengers gym. I love that this is just a thing that always happens. Oh, and it's important to note, Hank is still trapped at his 10-foot tall height. He's afraid he'll die if he shrinks down. And so Hank and Jan go back to their place and they think it's a menacing intruder, but it's actually Bill Foster, soon to be Black Goliath. Bill basically forgives Hank for being a jerk recently, and they set to work on some science stuff. Okay. Meanwhile, the living laser is drilling a hole in the roof to watch them, which is, again, kind of weird. And here he comes. He attacks through the ceiling, and they sort of fight. And I'm going to move ahead here because it's just another fight, action-y fight. Fight. A lot of dialogue, a lot of thought balloons. Just, so much text, and my gosh. This is a very simple story. I don't know that we needed all this. But anyway, they capture the living laser. He pretends to be unconscious, and then he blasts his way out of the. He zips out, gets away, and Cap and Hawkeye almost get killed because the hole that the living laser blasts in the bottom of their flying car causes it to not be able to fly properly, and it's going to crash. This is more of Tony Stark's money going down the drain, courtesy of the Avengers. But Hawkeye shoots an arrow into the bridge and saves himself and Cap. And now the living laser builds this. He's got this big giant machine, and he's blasting holes in things to test it. Oh, Lord. Look. It's the monkey. Oh, I have to bring everything to a screeching halt because I got to tell you, I did some research since the previous episode, you guys. I had to know more about the darling pet monkey for 1895. And I think last episode I told you how much that was in today's dollars, which was some astronomical amount, which makes sense for a pet monkey, but I don't know that people buying things off of a clipped out ad in a comic book are going to spend $100 and something. But anyway, I looked this up, and there's literature out there about this. This was a thing, right? This company in Miami was selling monkeys, and people bought them. People paid that astronomical, exorbitant amount for these monkeys. And over, the story that I found, and you can Google this and go down the darling pet monkey rabbit hole for yourself. But over and over, the stories I saw said that the monkeys were always aggressive, and they would escape, and they would destroy your stuff, and then they would escape. And there was one, I mean, it's one of those things where you don't want to laugh, but it's kind of hard not to with these stories. This is 1966, right? So this was 57 years ago. Okay, so this is a long time in the past. This monkey be dead regardless by now. But anyway, they were they were saying that like one family's monkey escaped, and they told the kids that he had like gone to the jungle or something to live with his family. But then for 2 years after that, there were reports all over this town of a rogue monkey breaking into houses and stealing food and stuff. And they the mom kept not letting the kids hear about these stories because they would know it was their monkey. It's just stories like that are all over the place. I have to admit, I mean, I know this is terrible as a huge Avengers guy as I am, but to some degree right now, I'm enjoying the saga of the darling pet monkeys more than I am the Avengers story. Oh my gosh. So anyway, yeah, go read them for yourself, but there's some pretty horrifying stories of the darling pet monkey. All right, moving back to the living laser, who is what we're here for in the first place. All right, so the living laser destroys a building that's being built, and he does all this stuff. He messes up these airplanes, and he sinks his ship and everything. And yeah, and so Cap goes out on his flying motorcycle looking for him. Now this is interesting. This is another thing I have an issue with. He says, using a formula which Tony Stark recommended before his trip to Washington, I coated my shield with a special alloy. It can't actually resist the laser beam for long, but it can successfully hold off a short, sudden burst by illuminatory refraction. Look at you, Stan. So here's my question. Did Cap not have his original shield here? Or had they just not yet established that it's freaking invulnerable, right? I mean, there's three prominent things. I'm sure there's others, right? But there's three prominent things in the Marvel universe that are nigh indestructible. Captain America's shield, Ultron's body later, and Wolverine's skeleton, right? Those are the three things that you can't destroy because they're made out of adamantium, or they're made out of vibranium adamantium alloy. We know that in the MCU, Captain America's shield is made out of vibranium. I know. But it's a combination of things in the comics, right? It's not just vibranium. So anyway, and it's like a one-off that can't be reproduced. That's why it's Captain America's shield. It's very special. It's the only one that can ever be made. Now, so what I'm, really wondering here, and I know you could say Thor's hammer, but in the third Thor movie, we saw Thor's hammer get shattered by Hela, right? So can't say that it's up there. All right. So anyway, Hawkeye zooms down. They go down into this space. They confront the living laser. He traps them in a living laser jail cell of laser beams, and they are slowly, they're slowly closing in. So Jan gets out, but he catches her in a mason jar and gasses her. And so next issue, victory, because it looks like the living laser is going to win. There's our cliffhanger for issue 34, I believe, right? And I'm not sure why Goliath is there. I looked all around and I don't see anything about Goliath, but he's got his picture there in the middle. And they're still advertising these TV things. It must have been on local TV because it advertises WRTV in New York. It looks like a next issue thing. So it's like every page I read in these current issues, I'm thinking it's saying next issue, like I'm on the last page. So they're pushing the Merry Marvel Marching Society for $1. And there's some interesting art letters here. There's that Black Widow. So anyway, let's rock and roll on into the next issue. Let's quickly get to, you don't want to see me any more than you have to. We're going to open it with cover. That's a good program. Lets you see it very well. Oh, now I got to go click it. And there it is. All right. The light that failed. This is actually, when I saw that this was the cover of the second half of the Living Laser story, I'm like, oh, that's a cover I've seen before. It's not a great cover, I don't think. It's okay. But the banner logo that they like to do and the light that failed, is that the issue tile? Yeah. That's fairly well known. And again, we've still got Wanda and Pietro up here, so never fret, true believers. They'll be back sooner or later, or they wouldn't still be up there. And so yeah, the laser beams are closing in. Oh, you know what? I was wrong. The previous issue was just Stan, but Roy scripted this issue. I forgot. I knew I'd seen that, but I was thinking I'd seen it on issue 36. It is, but he starts on 35, so he actually starts right in the middle of this storyline. So that's fine. We'll get the Living Laser storyline, and then we'll get into Stan in the next episode. So this is interesting here. So Hawkeye is despairing, and we're gonna die. And Cap is like, no, don't stow it. Stow that talk, mister. And so he uses his shield to try to stow that kind of talk, mister. Nobody's licked while he's still defiant, unyielding. And even if we die, the laser will never be safe, not as long as Goliath and the Wasp are alive. So meanwhile, Goliath is up to something. He's tracking them. Living Laser escapes with the Wasp in the jar. The lasers are closing in. Goliath smashes in, and he says my line is biochemistry, not mechanics, but this sure looks like a master switch to me. So Hank pulls a lever and saves them. And now they go searching again. And the Wasp, meanwhile, is with the Living Laser, and she's seeing what he's doing. He's negotiating with these two guys from Costa Verde. I feel like Costa Verde pops up occasionally in Marvel. This may be its first appearance. I'm not sure. But it's like, when you need a Latin American country that doesn't actually exist, that can have, coups going on and military stuff and all, they go to Costa Verde, which sounds like Costa Rica and Salsa Verde combined. It's the Green Coast, obviously. All right, so the Living Lasers agreed to help these two guys overthrow the government of Costa Verde. They then tell each other, We're just using him. When he builds us a weapon, we'll then kill him and take his weapon. Now, this is going to lead to some very uncomfortable stereotypical characters as we go forward, like the bearded cigar chewing Latin American guy who drops his cigar, and he's going to say some things here as we go along. And Jan is trying, excuse me, the hiccups now. Great. Jan is trying to figure out why the living laser likes her when I never saw him before today. But she says but the perplexed Miss Van Deen doesn't realize she did see the laser as Arthur Parks in our previous Power Pack issue. All right. So the living laser confronts, oh boy, look at these guys. Don Heck, man, come on now. You're better than that. And why these guys have degenerated from see, before they were like wearing suits and everything and looked really cool, and now they look like cartoons. It's horrible. And then here's the head guy that's having to advocate, and all that's going on in Costa Verde. The Avengers, they get the word of what's happening. They pack up and they head down to Costa Verde. They go underwater. The living laser is confronting the leaders of Costa Verde as the Avengers are closing in. And again, fight. And they have to jump in the water to evade the living laser's giant laser cannon. See, again, I don't like the living laser with a giant laser cannon. I like when the living laser is a giant laser. But anyway, and by the way, I'm distracted again by an ad. The war books, the complete editions, many illustrated with maps for like 50 cents a piece. I see the Dam Busters, Samurai, Thunderbolts. There's some interesting Panzer Leader, U-boats at war, 3 Corvettes. These are kind of cool. I kind of want to read these books. Anyway, so the Avengers jump in the water, and the Costa Verdeans think they're dead. They don't want to waste bullets on dead guys. So now living laser is talking to Jan. Jan realizes he's nuts. Arthur, if you really love me, you'll let me go so I can try to rescue the Avengers. Never! What do I care for your senseless attachment to foes I have destroyed? Your feelings will change in time when you realize that I am the most powerful being of all. Then and only then will you be a fit bride for the living laser. I mean, this is not the living laser that I remember. Oh, man, this is the 1960s. And then, this is the most important and greatest single word balloon in the entire story of either issue. After saying what he just said, the living laser walks off alone, lovingly stares at his giant laser gun, and he says, "The ways of women are a mystery to me." Yeah, you think? Hold on, we're not done though. All right, let me start over. The ways of women are a mystery to me, but not so my newly developed laser cannon. Your audio hasn't quit working. I just don't know what to say to that. All right, let's read it again. This is just too good. This is like my favorite Stan Lee dialogue I've ever read. Here we go. We've got to do it again. Let's just savor it. This is so good. The ways that let me back up, because you really kind of need to lead into this with the previous panel. Arthur, if you really love me, you'll let me go so I can try to rescue the Avengers. Never. What do I care for your senseless attachment to foes I've destroyed? Your feelings will change in time. He knows, right? He knows women. Your feelings will change in time when you realize that I am the most powerful being of all. Then and only then will you be a fit bride for the living laser. Because, see, he knows that her feelings will change. He knows why her feelings will change, and he knows that she will then be a fit bride for the living laser, talking to himself in the third person. And then in the very next panel, he says to himself, "The ways of women are a mystery to me, but not so my newly developed laser cannon." Well, why don't you marry your laser cannon then, Arthur? This is the moment I was just looking forward to talking about this entire story. Oh, Living Laser, how could you're one of my favorite mediocre mid-level villains. Why? So, to make you a fit villain, you keep your color scheme, you internalize your powers, you lose the cape and the stupid headgear thing, get a better headgear, which you will, and you get a lobotomy. I don't know. We got to do something to you. I'm going to look up, I'm going to show you if I remember before we're done. In fact, let me go ahead and do that. I want to, I know I don't normally do this, but I want to, whoa, computer's going crazy. I want to look up, I want to show you what he's supposed to, what I think is his greatest. Oh, there it is. There it is. Yes. All right. I want to share the screen and show you. Yeah, there it is. There, right there. There's different versions. See, there's how he looks in this story, and there's this modern thing. He's all, I don't know what that is. He looks stupid, but this, right? Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. That, and I know those of you that listen to this as a podcast, I apologize. Just Google Living Laser Marvel and look for the copper and green version that doesn't have a cape. He's got like the yellow zigzaggy across the chest. He's got a really cool like half mask over the top of his head with the little lines running over from back to front, and got the gauntlets with the like bulbs on them or something. He's got the Captain America boots with the Iron Man feet. I mean, that's a classic costume. The shoulder epaulets. I mean, this is just a classic costume. I love that version of the Living Laser. Now this one, yeah, he's again, they're retaining some of the elements as he gets. Oh, there's a Lego Living Laser, but that is just, to me, that's the Living Laser. He looks so good in that look. He fits in really well with Eric Johnston Power Man, with the Blizzard, with Claw, right? I mean, he's that type of villain. I love that level of villain where you get about 4 or 5 of them together and you got a good menace. All right, so let me go back to the comic now. But I just had to show you because, again, I love the Living Laser, but just not the way he's depicted here. But it's early. It's his first appearance. All right, his first story appearance. All right, so he fights the Avengers, and the Avengers are also fighting these Latin American guys, which is kind of bad. And Goliath gets in there. He finally catches back up with, oh, there's the darling pet monkey again. He catches back up with Jan. Hank, thank goodness you're alive. The Living Laser is a madman. He's in love with his giant laser cannon. That's me. You're telling me, but at least you're safe, and that's all. Look out behind you, Living Laser. And he shoots. Living Laser shoots Hank, but he uses a stun beam, so he's not dead. Save your tears, my love, for the moment. Surely you must realize that one of my vast intellect could design a light beam which would merely stun its victim. All right. So they imprison the Avengers in this tower in Costa Verde. But Hank has been working on a way to not be 10 feet tall anymore. Have you tried not being 10 feet tall, Hank? And he shrinks all the way down to Ant-Man size and escapes, and then goes to Jan. Hank, it isn't possible. Listen, no time to explain. Wear a cap and Hawkeye. They're in the tower, and the laser intends to blast it with this gigantic cannon. Okay. I'm not going to say anything. Large or small, no man that lives can face up to the Living Laser's beams. My only hope is to wreck the cannon's mechanism, but can I do it in time? Now, it's interesting that that's actually sounds like something Living Laser would say, and yet it's Goliath saying it. So now Living Laser says, now at last I shall prove to the Wasp the utter folly of her love for the vanquished Avengers. For when she beholds me destroying them before her very eyes, she will know that it is the laser who wields power supreme. Until Thor shows up, or any number of supervillains more powerful than you. I mean, I'm not sure why the living laser thinks that he's that powerful, but okay. There's some great Stan dialogue, right? Watch and marvel. Never again shall your eyes behold such sense staggering force. And then he says to himself, for when the tower is but a heap of rubble, I shall turn my laser cannon against them. So Jan doesn't have her wasp sting. She's still not able to just zap it. I thought we fixed that last issue, or a couple issues ago. I thought she could do it internally now without having to have it like a gun. Well, anyway, so he tries to swat her, and he gets shocked by feedback from the cannon, knocks him out. The bad guys take off. They run into the Avengers, who capture them along with the remnants of the National Army. Up with your hands, Valdez. We claim control of the government in the name of a democratic republic and free elections. Yeah, I bet that lasts 5 minutes, but say, Winghead, that guy could even write speeches for you. Thank you. Again, Hawkeye. I just got to say, I feel like I owe this to Hawkeye, right? Because for how many issues now? About 18 issues straight, I have complained about how Hawkeye is so annoying. And I just got to say, he really tones it down the last 2 or 3 issues. He's been not completely insufferable the last several issues. I'm really impressed with Hawkeye in the issues in the 30s. He's really been doing well. So they settle up with the legitimate government, and then Goliath, Hank reveals to Jan, I carried out a size reduction experiment. And she's like, you used yourself as your own guinea pig? And he's like, I hoped I wouldn't have to try shrinking, but luckily it worked out for the best. And you get this icy Jan talk. Well, isn't that just lovely for you? Uh-oh, fellas, I think I better talk to Jan alone for a second. How could you, Hank Pym? You let me be frightened out of my wits because I thought you were still in the laser cannon when it exploded. Okay, so he was in there. But honey, I barely got out in time. I just barely got out in time. I hardly had time to throw a coming out party. Well, I suppose I should be grateful you can change sizes again. You great, big, wonderful galoot. This means your problem is solved. You're back to normal. Okay, thanks for catching up to the burying the lead, Jan, but you did find it, which is that he's back to normal now. And let me just roll all the way back to the start for a second to point out that it said on the cover, and I didn't mention this, don't dare miss the big change in Goliath. Now, you may recall that this was what Stan said was going to happen in issue 34, but I think he thought that was going to be one issue, and this story ended up taking 2 issues, being another one of these cliffhanger stories. So it got pushed. It got pushed back an issue. So, anyway, we're to our last page. They get back to the United States. You know that this is Cap saying this. There she is, the sweetest sight any lonely American could ever want to see, Lady Liberty. Only Cap could say that. And of course, Hawkeye replies, Cap, if you think old Hawkeye is going to quarrel with sentiments like those, forget it. I'm too busy looking forward to seeing the Black Widow again. I think that's what has made Hawkeye chill out, right? When he was obsessed with Wanda, he was insufferable. But now that Wanda's off on her quest and Black Widow's back in town, Hawkeye is a lot easier to live with. So Wanda talks to the lady that had used to be in love with the living laser, and they kind of settle things. And Hank is back with Bill Foster talking about more experiments and stuff. And then Hawkeye goes back and sees Black Widow, Natasha, and she's like, I'll see if I can do her accent here. You mean you ran off to a holiday spot like Costa Verde and didn't take me along? How could you? That's a terrible accent, but she's Russian, whatever. I mean, In the movie, she's not, doesn't sound that way, but Now take it easy, Tasha. Honest, baby, a vacation spot. It wasn't. So even the Black Widow behaves like a 1960s Marvel written woman, and that's disappointing. And finally, Captain America is, standing there with no underwear on. I can't tell what's going on there. He's got white shorts over his uniform. Anyway, he's always one off on his own, a figure apart, right? To be an Avenger is to surrender a part of one's life, to be ever at the beck and call of all humanity. Well, geez, Steve. Still, in these quiet moments, each of the others has another human being to whom he can reach out. Only I have no one, no life, except behind the mask of the red, white, and blue Avenger. Instead, I have enemies, deadly foes who... And then we hear a voice from off panel, Captain America, I have reached you at last. And Steve says, you! Next, the quest. Now, when I saw that, and I saw the verb reached rather than found or caught up to or something, I thought, this is not going to be a villain, right? And the way, even though he says you, so he knows who it is, it's not Baron Zemo or something. My guess was it's Quicksilver. Well, I cheated. I looked ahead. It's not Quicksilver, but I'm not far from wrong, so you can guess who it is. And the quest, this will be duplicated in the 180s or so with the Yesterday quest. So Wanda and Pietro are forever going off on a quest by themselves and then coming back and involving the Avengers. So, all right. It always looks like the last page because they got these little ads down here, but this is the last page. So there's the Living Laser's first appearance. I really didn't like much about the Living Laser in this appearance. If this is the only time I'd ever seen the Living Laser, I would not like the Living Laser. But as I showed you, he looks better later. He's a cooler character later. He gets in with some other villains of his stature later, and I think becomes a much better character on and off. Though what they've done with him now, I will not go so far as to get into. So next issue, at long last, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch return, and things are looking up for our ordinarily agonized Avengers. All right. So we're going to leave that. I do want to mention one thing, though, because you remember I told you that it was a big deal that the Avengers actually fought like blatant racists, the Klan in green suits in the last couple of issues before this story. And somebody here, Dwight Heil, that's a great name, Heil, and he's going to be talking about the Serpent Society. Or the Sun, what are they, the Sons of the Serpent? I don't know, there's some serpent people. The Klan, the Green Klan, okay? But he makes a good point. He says, Avengers 32 is truly one of the literary greats of our time. The story deals with a common hate of mine. Besides communism, this is bigotry. Well, we know that Stan is very big on going after that. The Sons of the Serpent, there you go, are the lowest excuses for human beings I've ever seen. Amen to that. When the next issue comes out, I hope I have the pleasure of reading that Goliath walks all over those creeps. Stan, in all honesty, I think you're writing about such things as communism and bigotry is showing today's thinking reader what's wrong with the world today. As far as I'm concerned, this is what keeps Marvel way out in front of your chuckle rivals. I'm glad to see that you've brought back the former Giant Man, but I personally liked him better in his old costume, et cetera, et cetera. Blah, blah, blah. I just want to agree, though, with Dwight Heil that, yeah, having the Avengers go up against a bunch of freaking bigots was awesome. And it's so Stan Lee, right? I mean, this is so Stan Lee. If Jack Kirby had involved too, Jack would have put himself into the story. He'd have gone beating up the Sons of the Serpent by himself. So, because, I'll wrap up with this. There's that famous story where some like neo-Nazis went down to Marvel's offices and they called up and said, we're here to see Jack Kirby. We're going to kick his butt. And Jack's like, I'm on my way down now, boys. And when he got down to the bottom, they were gone. They wouldn't want any part of, they didn't want any part of Jack. So love it, love it, love it. All right. Well, there you go, gang. We've gotten to the end of Avengers 34 and 35, the first appearance of the Living Laser, and we did it in less than 45 minutes. So I will see you guys next time, where we will get into the second issue, we now know, scripted by Roy Thomas. and the return of Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. Go to www.avengersassemble.net, www.avengersassemble.net. All the episodes are available there, as well as on our YouTube channel, White Rocket TV. And click on the button. Do me a favor. Click on the button. Become a patron. Help us out. Help us keep this series going as I attempt to read all of the Avengers. I'll see you guys next time.